What is up, guys? Londrick here, and now I'm back with an episode of Londrick's Fave Fives. It's been a while, hasn't it? But I've decided to bring it back for a little bit, at least up until WrestleMania anyway. So, just want to apologise for not having the videos for a while. I mean, I don't really want to get into details of why, but I just haven't really felt it. I've just been a bit quiet on the channel. I feel like it was something I needed to do. But now I'm going to come back, and I'm just going to have a little bit of a channel update. So I've got a 3 episode of Londrick's Fave Fives coming up over the next 3 weeks. This one, which is going to be, because obviously WrestleMania season, I decided to do something else related to WrestleMania season, because what always ties into WrestleMania every year, that's right, the WWE Hall of Fame. I mean, it's always been a big thing, although I admit over the last couple of years maybe lost its luster a little bit. So for this one, we're going to talk about WWE Hall of Fame classes. Now, this has got nothing to do with the actual ceremony, so for example, it might have a great class, but it might have been a horrible ceremony, for example, or there might have been a mediocre class, but the actual ceremony was really good. So it's not about the ceremony, it's about the actual quality of the class that's going in. Then after that, next week, we're going to do Fave 5 WrestleMania matches. Now, that's going to be a difficult one. Then the week after that is going to be Fave 5 WrestleMania shows. And then the week of WrestleMania, you're going to get the usual shit. I mean, the week before WrestleMania, of course, I'm definitely going to do WrestleMania previews / predictions in audio form. I didn't do it last year because I literally went on vacation the week before WrestleMania, and I didn't get back on the Friday. But I'm not going anywhere this year, so we will do that. Maybe I'm undecided. Will I do a Takeover New York preview / prediction video? Maybe. I haven't decided that one yet, but I might do it, I might not, I don't know. And then obviously the typical videos, NXT Takeover New York review. It'll be Saturday morning, one because it's on Friday night this year. Then of course WrestleMania 35 and the slideshow review. So now we've got that little update out the way, let's get to the actual video. As the title says, Fave 5 Hall of Fame classes. Let's just rattle off a few honourable mentions with notable inductees. So honourable mention, 2007 Hall of Fame notable inductees: Dusty Rhodes, Mr. Perfect, Jim Ross, Jerry Lawler. 2005 notable inductees: Hulk Hogan, Roddy Piper, the Iron Sheik. 2012 with Edge, the Four Horsemen, Yokozuna. But enough about honourable mentions, let's get the actual list. Coming in at number 5, the Hall of Fame class of 2009. For me, probably the most underrated Hall of Fame class ever. I sit there, analyse and look at this class and you think, oh my god, this class was absolutely amazing, wasn't it, really, when you think about it? Now, they went through a little period of time in of the area they were in. So, for example, 2008, they were in Florida, so they did people that were really connected to Florida Championship Wrestling back in the day, so Eddie Graham, Gordon Soley, etc. Now, this year they were in Dallas, Texas, so it was really a Texas-themed Hall of Fame induction ceremony, which you'll see. I mean, we got some of the absolute greatest of all time here, spanning a couple of different decades. I mean, let's just get it out of the bat. Yes, this was the year Coco Beware was in. They can't all be great. I mean, let's not shit on Coco too much. I mean, we've done that over the years. But yes, this is the year that Coco Beware became a WWE Hall of Famer. But just look at the others. I mean, for example, so Cowboy Bill Watts was inducted at the Hall of Fame this year, which kind of wished he waited till he did one of the Louisiana WrestleManias, New Orleans one, either 30 or 34. I mean, that would have been fitting if Bill Watts had gone in New Orleans, Louisiana, where he was a big deal in Mid-South. But obviously Bill Watts, controversial figure. Some people hate him, some people love him. But for his body of work, an absolute surefire Hall of Fame. I mean, headline attraction in the 60s and 70s. I mean, he'd even had a few big title matches with Bruno, Sammartino in the Garden. Probably more famous for being the promoter of Mid-South Wrestling in the 70s through to the mid-80s. Then, of course, had runs as the president of WCW and of all that. So Bill Watts, definitely a great inductee. Now, a tag team induction the Funk brothers, Terry and Dory Funk. Yeah, these two guys really could have went by themselves at some point, especially Terry, because obviously I think Terry's a bit more well known to modern wrestling fans because of his work as crazy old bastard Terry Funk in ECW in the 1990s. He even wrestled a little bit for promotions throughout the 2000s as well. But of course, Terry Dory Funk, you got to think absolute Texas legends, two of the greatest of all time. I mean, both the NWA World Champion back in the day where the NWA Championship was the title to win. Dory Funk first for about 69 till about 73 maybe. Then of course Terry was a champion for 75 to 77. Yeah, both had awesome careers. Although Terry more so, I think, because obviously Dory Funk just kind of played plain old Dory Funk for years, and by the mid 80s was pretty much past it. But Terry Funk was able to keep his career going. Had that legendary feud with Ric Flair in 1989. And then totally reinvented himself as a hardcore nutcase in the 1990s. Was a big part of the first ECW pay-per-view, Bare Legal, 1997. I mean, these were great inductions, weren't they? Now, next one, I think there's a great one for me. Henry Howard Finkel got into the Hall of Fame. I mean, that's a yes. I was so glad that happened. I mean, obviously, Howard Finkel, not a wrestler, of course, but probably I won't say probably, I think he is the greatest ring announcer of all time. I mean, you look at all those iconic matches over the years, you had Howard Finkel's voice part of those matches. I mean, Finkel was with the company, God, I think he started like in the late 70s, so back in the WWF days, I mean, he was around then. So he's around for Vince Senior, and then obviously in the early 80s, the Backlund era. Massive part of the golden age of the 80s. I mean, Howard Finkel, all those WrestleManias. Through the 1990s, I mean, say about 99, 2000, he started getting phased out a bit as an announcer. I think especially when Lillian Garcia came in to be the Raw announcer, you'd see less and less of Finkel over the years. I mean, and then by the mid-2000s, he was pretty much doing his walk onto WrestleMania appearance to announce the Hall of Famers. And I think one of his, then he did a awesome spot where he was seeing Punk's personal ring announcer Survivor Series 2011, and he'd show up on like Raw anniversary shows and old school Raws and things like that. But he's pretty much, I think he's always had another job with the company though. I think he's been a big one of the main workers behind the scenes. As far as I'm aware, he's had a lot to do with WWE.com over the years. I mean, I remember back in the dark ages of the internet, in our dial-up days, Windows Media Player, there was a show on WWE.com called Bite This that you could watch, and Howard Finkel was always on that. I mean, yeah, just one of the big voices from my childhood for sure, Howard Finkel, absolute 100% Hall of Famer. And then, obviously, you're in Texas. Who do you induct in Texas? The Von Erich family. You have to induct the Von Erich family. I mean, Texas wrestling and the Von Erich family are so synonymous with each other. I'd have a slight bone of contention with this one, though, because if they start to induct all the Von Erich family, when that includes Mike and Chris Von Erich, I mean, so Mike and Chris Von Erich are officially WWE Hall of Famers, which is just like, what? I mean, especially Chris Von Erich. I mean, Chris Von Erich wrestled very, very briefly, died when he was 21 years old. I mean, Mike Von Erich, I think Mike Von Erich was just a mediocre wrestler. I mean, yeah, just Mike Von Erich's career just wasn't very good at all. So I feel like they should have just inducted Fritz, David, Kerry, and Kevin. I think that would have been better just to induct those four. Leave Mike and Chris Von Erich out of the Hall of Fame. But for those four in particular, I mean, obviously Fritz Von Erich was around for years and years and years, back in the 60s, 70s, up until about the early, I think he retired in like 1982 or 3. Because his official retirement match was against King Kong Bundy, wasn't it? But I'm not sure exactly what year it was. So obviously Fritz Von Erich was a long-time promoter, long-time wrestler. And then his sons for a while. I mean, obviously the Von Erich tragedy does not need to be detailed here, but obviously for a time in the early 80s, David, Kevin and Kerry were like rock stars in Texas. I mean, they really were that over. Obviously David Von Erich, absolute awesome worker. just tragic what happened to him. Passed away at the age of 25. We know there's so much to come from that guy. I mean, a lot of people had him down as a future NWA champion. Obviously, I'll say Kerry Von Erich's probably the most well-known of the three, probably due to his run in the WWF in the early 1990s. Yeah, another tragic story, passed away at the age of 33 from suicide. Could have been so much better, and Kevin Von Erich was the only one that's still alive, another great worker as well. So then obviously Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, yep, that was an absolute must for me. I mean, so glad Steamboat got in. And this, of course, tie into the Legends match of the Legends versus Chris Jericho at WrestleMania 25 the next day, which led to, oh god, I love Steamboat's 2009 mini comeback. I really do. I thought it was just the best. It was fucking awesome. It was just great to see Ricky Steamboat take his rightful place at the WWE Hall of Fame. And the headline act that year, of course, Stone Cold Steve Austin. I mean, if you're having a Hall of Fame induction in Texas, Stone Cold's got to be a man to headliner, hasn't it? I mean, arguably the greatest of all time, if not the greatest of all time, one of the greatest of all time. I mean, but when you think of Texas, you think of that old rattlesnake Stone Cold Steve Austin. I mean, he was one of the absolute essentials to go into the Hall of Fame, and he did in 2009, just 6 years after retiring from the ring. Now, obviously, his induction speech wasn't that great because they had a big time limit on the Hall of Fame that year, but it's not about the ceremony, it's about the class, and this Hall of Fame class was absolutely amazing. Coming at number 4, we're only actually going back for 2 years, and we're going back to the 2017 Hall of Fame induction. I mean, I would say 2018 and the 2019 Hall induction, as it looks like, it's going to be a decent Hall of Fame class, but I think this one might go down as the last really awesome Hall of Fame class in history, for the simple reason because of now we're in 15 straight years of Hall of Fame inductions. I mean, you're inevitably going to run out of the absolute best talent to put in, aren't you? I mean, at the end of the day, you're going to get to the point where pretty much everyone's going in now, so it's harder and harder to find a great class. But I thought they pulled a great one out of their asses for this one. I mean, you've got a nice little mix here of different companies and different eras. So, Teddy Long, that was a good induction. I mean, Teddy Long's had a long and really underrated career doing a lot of different things. I mean, obviously has a career as a manager, firstly back in WCW, most notably managing Doom in the late 80s till about 91. I think he was the very first manager of the Mean Mark Callis as well, aka The Undertaker. Then, of course, he had a WWE manager running in the early 2000s, managing the likes of Rodney Mack and Mark Henry, and I believe Jazz as well. But then, of course, had a long career as a referee as well. He was a referee back in the Attitude Era. Might have been a referee for WCW, I'm not sure, I can't remember. But I think he's mostly fondly remembers being the SmackDown GM in the mid to late 2000s. Probably the most underrated general manager of all time, in my opinion. It doesn't get enough love, and if you think how long he was there for, I mean, I think he started in 2004. Yeah, pretty sure it was 04. Then maybe having a couple of little breaks, but if he was doing that job till about 2012, because I think he was briefly GM of ECW as well. If I remember rightly, I think he was the GM of ECW for a little bit as well. Of course, he liked tag team matches, and yeah, just a guy that's been around the business a long time and is well respected, definitely deserving the Hall of Fame. Beth Phoenix, I mean, for me, yeah, that's fine. I mean, obviously, you think maybe she's a bit young to be in the Hall of Fame, but she had a good impact on the business. I mean, I feel like Beth Phoenix would be awesome if she was around now, because obviously she was around at a time where the women's division just wasn't respected as it is now. But say have Beth Phoenix 10 years ago in the main roster in the women's division now, where she could face the likes of Asuka, Becky, Charlotte, Ronda, and Nia Jax, etc. I think she'd be pretty damn awesome, to be fair. And I could be wrong about this, but I think of her induction, her and Edge are the only husband and wife couple to be in the WWE Hall of Fame. Now, obviously the Rock and Roll Express, which that surprised me because I just didn't think they'd go in because they were more associated with NWA Southern Wrestling, and obviously the father work at the WWF. I mean, they were there briefly for a little bit in 1993, but not a part of the official roster. I think he did a couple of shots as part of the WWF Smoky Mountains relationship, most notably Survivor Series 1993. Then they were there for a little while in 1998 as part of that NWA storyline, but that sucked, to be honest. I mean, the Rock and Roll way past the prime. And it just looked sad them trying to do the 1980s Rock and Roll Express gimmick in 1998. But outside the WWE, one of the greatest tag teams of all time. I mean, obviously, the work in Jim Crockett Promotions, World Class Championship Wrestling, Memphis, all those. I mean, legendary. I mean, at the time, just so over with the younger crowd in the 1980s. I mean, obviously, legendary feud of the Midnight Express. And this isn't specifically about inductors, but obviously, getting Jim Cornette back to induct him was just amazing. And they took a hell of a risk giving Jim Cornette a live microphone there, didn't they? But the induction came off well, and it was just great to see their team like the Rock and Roll Express get the due and go to the WWE Hall of Fame. Then obviously Rick Rude, that was a long overdue one. I mean, I was waiting a long time to see Rick Rude go to the Hall of Fame, and I guess reasons didn't happen is just because they tend to only induct one dead person a year, and I guess the reason for that is because they think if like they induct all these dead people and obviously they're not there to accept the induction, all that, it might look a bit morbid. And a lot of these guys that are dead passed away in the 30s or 40s as well, so they kind of got to deal with that. But Rick Rude, so glad he got his due and now he's in the WWE Hall of Fame. I mean, he absolutely deserved it. He could have went in any time, really, over the last 10 to 12 years before he actually went in. But he finally got in, so better late than never, I guess. I mean, but over the years, Rick Rude was definitely one of those admissions you always notice. I mean, obviously, what a career he had. I mean, especially in the WWF in the 1980s, ravishing Rick Rude with Bobby Heenan, legendary feuds with Jake the Snake Roberts, probably most notable for beating the Ultimate Warrior for the Intercontinental title at WrestleMania 5, and then having that awesome feud of the Ultimate Warrior through 89 and left in 90. But for me, I think his best work was definitely his WCW run in the 1990s. So like 91, 92, 93. First as a leader of the Dangerous Alliance, great feud of Sting. Probably one of the better WCW United States champions of that era. I mean, for me, I think he's definitely top 5 WCW United States champion of all time. I mean, obviously, the Ricky Steamboat feud was absolutely classic in 1992. Obviously, kind of fizzled out a little bit towards the end, and then obviously he ultimately had to retire in 1994 due to a back injury. But then he popped up in ECW briefly in 1997. Came back to the WWF also in 1997 as Shawn Michaels' insurance policy. And obviously and famously was on Raw Nitro on the same night in I think November 1997. So to explain how that would happen. So at the time, Nitro was live every single week, and Raw was live every other week. But Rick Rude was working without a contract with the WWF at the time, so he was basically on a pay-per-appearance deal. So he'd come in, do his job, get paid, but he wasn't under any obligation with the WWF. So this was after Montreal, and Rude was one of the guys that was particularly pissed off about it. So he did the tape Raw, and then behind the duress back, jumped to WCW, and then appeared on that live Nitro that the Raw that he previously taped was going to air. So it's just something that it's a situation that can never really happen again, and it's one of those cool trivia moments that Rick Rude did. But then, of course, Rick Rude ultimately passed away in 1999. It's just a shame. He was only 40 years old, guys, at the time. When you put that in perspective, Rick Rude, when he died, he was younger than AJ Styles is now. So you're thinking if Rick Rude could stayed healthy, not retired, he could have wrestled well into the Attitude in the Monday Night Wars era, couldn't he? Really think about it. But yeah, great induction. And for me, Diamond Dallas Page, I was so happy that one happened. Now, obviously, this one's based off his WCW work because let's face it, he wasn't going to the Hall of Fame based on his WWF work, was he? Because his WWF run in 2001, 2002. massive disappointment. Don't need to get into that there, but for his body work in WCW, absolutely Hall of Fame material, you know. I mean, obviously, for me, one of WCW's best homegrown talents. I mean, everyone talks about Goldberg, and yes, undoubtedly, Bill Goldberg probably was the biggest star WCW produced during the Monday Night Wars, but I'll say right behind him is Diamond Dallas Page. I mean, what an organic rise it was. I mean, the guy who started wrestling at 35, the ex-manager, this guy's going to be your world champion, but it happened. I mean, through hard work, dedication, yeah, obviously some political stuff like being friends with Bischoff and being close to Kevin Nash and Scott all helped him. But ultimately, DDP had to put the work in and produce, and of course, rose up the ranks that legendary feud of Randy Savage in 1997, the massive popularity in 1998, that awesome match of Goldberg Halloween Havoc, then of course becoming a 3-time world champion in 1999-2000. I mean, it was just so good to see Diamond Dallas Page get in. Then obviously the star inductee that year, of course, was Kurt Angle, which you got to remember. So this was Kurt. So I was glad to see Kurt Angle his foot back in the door in WWE, didn't he? This is what made it happen. So that's cool. I mean, now granted, Kurt Angle's been wrestling after this, which kind of doesn't make sense, because usually when you go into the Hall of Fame, it's because you retired, you're not going to wrestle anymore. But it wasn't the case with Kurt Angle. But like I say, got Kurt Angle back in the door of WWE. And of course, that led to him being the Raw general manager. That led to him having a few matches. And now WrestleMania 35, well, he says he's going to retire, but who knows if he's actually going to retire. But they're building it as Kurt Angle's retirement match. So let's just see how that pans out. But so it's just been nice. I think obviously Kurt Angle had to come back home to WWE. Was Kurt Angle good in TNA? Yes. Was he great in TNA at times? I would say yes, but WWE was always Kurt Angle's home, and just as the years gone by, it was just sad that he never got back in the company, but he finally did in 2017, and obviously absolute Hall of Fame material. I mean, Kurt Angle, I think it's fair to say, is one of the absolute greatest workers of all time. Great microphone guy, awesome performer. Definitely, it was a great way. I think it was a great Hall of Fame class. I mean, this is a Hall of Fame class people might sleep on, but I'll say, yeah, awesome stuff. Coming in at number 3, we're going back to 2006 and the 2006 Hall of Fame induction class. Now, yeah, obviously there's a reason why this is on the list. I mean, I'm not going to shy away from that. I mean, you probably all know what it is, but we'll talk about. I think, but apart from that, it's a great class objectively. I mean, obviously different eras in here and all that, different promotions and stuff. So we had our celebrity inductee that year, which is William the Refrigerator Perry. That was like, whatever. I mean, look, you can't really take the Celebrity Hall of Fame wing too seriously, can you? I mean, this is only the second guy to go in that, though. I mean, the first one was Pete Rose in 2004. But yeah, whatever, fine. I mean, a couple of induction. I mean, Tony Atlas for me was an induction. I mean, yeah, fine. I guess he was sort of a star back in the day, but WWE Hall of Fame. Wait, that's whatever. I mean, he's certainly no worse than people like Hillbilly Jim and Coco Beware going in the Hall of Fame, is he? Or Stevie Ray, but we'll not go there. I mean, yeah, but obviously at the time, a big African American star. Him and Rocky Johnson were the first African American WWF Tag Team Champions. I mean, he'd been a fairly big star in quite a few territories over the years, so yeah, fine, whatever. Then you got as far as tag teams go, the original Blackjacks, Lanza and Mulligan. I mean, obviously, yep, they're definitely good inductees. I mean, they were a big tag team in the 70s, of course. Then, of course, Lanza worked for the WWF for years, really, as a road agent back in the day, from the 80s right through to the 1990s. Not quite sure when he left the company, but I think he might have even been still there around this time. Obviously, Blackjack Mulligan, the father of Barry Windham, big star in the territory days, but the Blackjacks, great tag team and definite Hall of Fame inductees. I think the last few are the ones that really make this Hall of Fame class awesome. I mean, the second female inductee in the Hall of Fame, Sensational Sherry, yep. So glad she got in. I mean, because obviously up in this point, the only Hall of Fame woman was the Fabulous Moolah. And obviously the years after this, women are getting in every year now, which is cool. But Sherry was one of the first women to be in the Hall of Fame, and how fitting, because she was probably one of the first female stars in the company. I mean, I think she had a great career. And also, I've said this not really about the induction ceremony, but you watch this induction ceremony, Sherry was absolutely bombed on this induction ceremony. She was absolutely hammered when she did her speech, and the speech was actually hilarious, to be fair. And I know this might sound bad, but because she already died a year later, but I don't give a shit. Even back then, Sherry was still hot as hell. I don't care what anyone says. So obviously, Sherry Martel started off in the AWA mainly. I mean, she was the AWA Women's Champion for a while, but I don't know how much that really meant, because women's wrestling wasn't that big in the 1980s. And she came to the WWF initially as a wrestler, but according to she was the WWF Women's Champion back in like 87 maybe, 88, I'm not sure. She actually did beat the Fabulous Moolah for the belt, but again, WWF in the 1980s, they weren't really pushing the women, so the success as a women's wrestler was really moderate. But I think a real career highlight came in the years of managing, so especially in the WWF. I mean, she had an awesome run as a manager in the WWF in late 80s, early 90s. I mean, check this out. So first off, she manages Macho Man Randy Savage, which, you think about it, hell of an act to follow. Savage is now a heel, and obviously for all these years being managed by Elizabeth. So how the hell do you live with a Macho Man and Miss Elizabeth? Now, obviously it wasn't as good as Macho Man as Elizabeth, but I think for some reason, I think it just kind of worked. Hey, I mean, obviously Sherry's crazy character and Macho Man being quite crazy worked well together. I mean, everyone remembers that cauldron segment of Macho Man, Zeus and Sensational Sherry before SummerSlam 89. So then when she was finished with Savage, you ended up with Ted DiBiase. And then, of course, I think most people remember her as the first manager of Shawn Michaels back in 1992. So obviously Shawn Michaels turned heel, morphed into the Heartbreak Kid character. But I think Sensational Sherry definitely was a massive part of that package. I think she really did help establish Shawn in his early singles career. For me, that's probably Sherry's best manager run ever as Shawn Michaels manager. But check that great list though: Savage, DiBiase, Michaels. Then obviously later on she went to WCW, managed Ric Flair. So she was in Ric Flair's corner for a while. Then I think she's probably remembered for managing Harlem Heat as well. I think that lasted up until about 96, 97. Then I feel like kind of in the late 90s she kind of disappeared from wrestling altogether. And actually, as a matter of fact, I think she was in ECW in between WWF and WCW as well. Because I think she managed Shane Douglas for a little bit early on, if I'm remembering right. I think she was definitely there in 93, early 94. I think she managed Shane Douglas, I'm not sure. But yeah, so Sensational Sherry then. Mean Gene Okerlund, I mean, that's a no-brainer. I mean, obviously, we lost Gene just this past year, but much like Howard Finkel, I would say the absolute greatest of all time of what he did. I mean, Mean Gene Okerlund was the backstage interviewer for decades, absolute decades in the business, and he wasn't just a guy that stood there and held the microphone and that was it. I mean, Mean Gene had a character. He was very charismatic in his own right, and probably one of the biggest personalities the company had. I mean, he led all the interviews. He was a guy leading the interviews, asking the relevant questions, and obviously having the appropriate reactions. I mean, he really did help push the storylines along. I mean, obviously, he did that for years. I mean, he was in the AWA for about a decade. Then, of course, probably most famous for his work in the WWF in the 1980s. I mean, in the expansion days, I mean, obviously, he had all the wrestlers. But then you had people like Mean Gene Okerlund. He was there. He was one of the icons of that era. Then, of course, he went into WCW in the 1990s, which I guess was moderately successful. I mean, yeah, I think it was successful, but obviously not as good as his WWF run. Then, after that, in the 2000s, he worked for the WWF in some capacity for the rest of his life. I mean, he'd often just pop up on DVD documentaries. I mean, he was a host of WWE Confidential for a little while. I mean, he did stuff on the old WWE 24/7, the Legends Roundtable thing. I mean, he was a guy that was well regarded and well respected by his peers, and I believe he was the first announcer type guy to go to the WWE Hall of Fame and that was well deserved. And then obviously Vern Gagne. Now that wow, that one actually happened. I mean, what was weird about this one, because at the time, I think this was the first real induction for me to establish that this wasn't necessarily a WWE Hall of Fame, it was a Wrestling Altogether Hall of Fame, because up until that point, guys that hadn't worked in the WWE weren't getting the WWE Hall of Fame. I mean, it was guys that pretty much getting the Hall of Fame based on the WWF body of work. But Vern Gagne, of course, was the first one to really break that mould. And it was, I think, if you know your wrestling history, you'd be extremely surprised if Vern Gagne got in. I mean, because obviously the bad blood between Vince and the Gagnes was quite legendary. Obviously, back in the day, Vince expanded the WWF territory with poached all the top stars, took the television stations off them, etc. Obviously led to most of the old-time territories going out of business by 1990. And same for AWA. I mean, AWA in particular got fucked in the arse. I mean, within a couple of months period, Vince had stolen Hulk Hogan, Jesse Ventura, Bobby Heenan, Mean Gene Okerlund, and then various others over the years, like such as Kurt Hennig, the Rockers, lots and lots of guys really. And then obviously the philosophical difference between McMahon and Gagne, of course. Vince McMahon was about sports entertainment, and Vern Gagne was just a pure pro wrestling man. Damn it, he liked his wrestling old school and realistic and all that. Vern loved amateur wrestling and stuff like that. But then, obviously for his body of work, I mean, Gagne, a massive star in the 50s, and then obviously in 1960s, 70s. I mean, obviously as the promoter of the AWA, he was pretty much the AWA champion for most of that time. But at the same time, he still had to deliver. I mean, it's all well and good being the promoter saying, yeah, I'm going to put the title on myself, but you've still got to draw money and draw interest. And then Gagne undoubtedly did that, retiring in the very early 80s. But then, of course, it fizzled out by the end, and then obviously AWA went out of business in 1991. But that was just so cool that Gagne got that moment, because I think Vern Gagne was pushing 80 at this time. So it was just great at that stage of his life to Vern Gagne to get recognised for his contributions to the wrestling business. And I think this is around the time WWE were doing the AWA DVD, so it was probably a time to that, because I think around 2002ish WWE bought the tape library for the AWA, and I think this was around the time WWF was starting to put their tape library to good use with DVD releases and things like that. But yeah, just great that he got in there. And then obviously the co-headliner Eddie Guerrero, that was bittersweet really. I mean, it was awesome that Eddie Guerrero was going in. It was just tragic that it was so soon, because obviously this was 2006, way before the time Eddie should have been going to the Hall of Fame. But of course, Eddie Guerrero sadly passed away in 2005. And obviously, I think once he died, it was a no-brainer for him to go into the Hall of Fame. Because obviously, I don't even want to get into WWE's exploitation of Eddie Guerrero in 2006. But at least this was one of the nice things that they did, put him in the Hall of Fame that year. I mean, if Eddie Guerrero was still alive now, he'd be 51 years old. And you'd be thinking this would be around the time, or maybe the last 2 or 3 years, would be the ideal time to be going to WWE Hall of Fame. Because you think, he was only 38 when he died, and you think he might have retired from the ring 5 or 6 years ago, maybe. And you think if he wanted to, he could still be working in WWE. Could be working down at NXT or whatever the hell he wanted to do. But yeah, it was just sad that we had to go in so soon, but great that he got recognised. I mean, obviously Eddie Guerrero, pretty much I don't really need to explain that one, the greatest of all time. Definitely Hall of Fame worthy. Now the headline of this year, this was it for me. Bret Hart was finally going to WWE Hall of Fame. And you got to understand, if you're a long time Bret fan, you weren't sure if this was ever going to happen. I mean, this is the one that easily could never happen. I mean, if you think about it. So obviously Bret Hart, I don't want to get the circumstances of Bret leaving, but there was just a lot of bad blood for so many years between Bret and Vince that you thought, Bret's going to be the one that never comes back, never gets recognised and all that. And just so glad it finally happened, and Bret and the WWE were able to put the differences aside to make this happen for Bret and Bret's fans. I mean, so the Heat really, obviously the Montreal Screwjob, no need to go into that, but I think obviously as Bret got older, one of Bret's biggest concerns was his legacy getting forgotten, because I mean, the Bret Hart, that's probably one of the most important things in the world to him, the Bret's legacy being recognised, because obviously Bret retired, Bret fades into history, he doesn't want to be forgotten, I think he's the kind of guy who wants all the younger fans to know about him, wants all the younger fans to watch his matches back and all that. Now, Vince and Bret talked about in those days, the VHS collaboration of Bret Hart's work before Bret even left the company, but then Bret Hart left the company, that didn't happen, so Owen passed away in 1999. As the story goes, I think it was the day before the funeral, Bret and Vince met in a park in Calgary and just talked it out. And one of the things that came up, Vince said to Bret, "Is there anything I can do for you?" And then Bret said, "Yeah, Vince, he is. I would really like to have access to my footage and photos anytime I need them." Because at the time, Bret was working on his book and he wanted to use some of the photos WWF owned in the book. And I think, and then, so Vince said, "Done, promise." Vince promised him he'd let it happen. And then a couple of days later, Vince said he basically didn't recall that part of the conversation. So he reneged, and that got Bret pissed off even more. And of course, obviously, the circumstances of Owen's death really bad blood there. Then Bret Hart, of course, had the stroke in 2002. Obviously, if you had a stroke, you'd be pretty depressed. So when Bret got the phone installed in his hospital, the first person to phone him was Vince McMahon. So Vince phoned Bret Hart and he gave him one of those classic Vince McMahon pep talks. And at the time, I think Bret was so down after getting the stroke. I think he felt so grateful that Vince gave him a phone call. And I think it definitely helped heal the wound. I think at that point, because obviously when you have a stroke, I imagine a lot of things change in your life. You try to hold up bad feelings. And Bret's always said when he got that stroke and had that phone call, that's when Bret Hart dropped a lot of his bad feelings. And at the time, it was thinking, maybe. I think the general idea was that maybe. So over time, you'd hear rumours about Bret Hart possibly doing something with the WWE. Then obviously when the Hall of Fame came back in 2004, you always thought maybe Bret will go into the Hall of Fame, maybe. I think at least a couple of times Bret Hart and the company talked about doing something together, but it never quite came to pass. Because I think it was about around the time the Ric Flair DVD came out in 2003. There was talks about maybe doing that with Bret. Obviously Bret was, but I think the sticking point was always Montreal, because obviously Bret has his opinion of what happened that day, WWE has their opinion of what happened that day, so it's kind of hard to make a DVD with that when you both so far apart in your opinions. And then 2005, there was going to be a DVD come out. I mean, what DVD did come out in 2005 as well? The Self-Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior, right? Remember that one? Well, the WWF was going to do a similar DVD on Bret Hart called Screwed. It was going to be titled Screwed the Bret Hart Story. And it was basically going to be pretty much like the Ultimate Warrior, a hatchet job on Bret Hart. And then, obviously, according to Rumour and Innuendo, stuff was even recorded for interviews, pretty much bashing Bret and all that. So Bret got wind of this, and then, like I said before, one of Bret's most important things to him was his legacy and being remembered by the wrestling fans. So I think Bret finally intervened, got Vince to change his mind, and finally convinced Vince to scrap that DVD, and they finally made a deal to do the Bret Hart DVD documentary, The Best There Is, The Best There Was, The Best There Ever Will Be, which was finally released in 2005. So it's been 8 years, but Bret Hart and WWE were finally working together in some capacity, and that was an awesome DVD. I still got that DVD somewhere in the house. I love that DVD so much. I mean, I was so hyped to get it at the time, because remember, this was 2006, pre-network days, where you couldn't just watch anything on your computer or streaming sites at a click of a finger. Obviously the documentary's great, obviously the match selection's awesome. I mean, I probably wouldn't recommend it now because of the WWE Network, and I believe this documentary is on the WWE Network, but I'm not certain. Obviously, in all the matches you can just find them anywhere now. So obviously there's stuff that open doors, and you're thinking, And then they finally agreed 2006 was going to be the time for Bret Hart to take his rightful place in the WWE Hall of Fame. And it was awesome. And I was just so happy that it happened. I mean, we just so, and then obviously that ultimately led to Bret coming back to the company in an on-screen capacity in 2010. It's just a shame really that it took Bret so long, but it finally happened 2006. Kind of wish Bret, looking back now, because Bret did come back to the company in 2010, that he made an appearance at WrestleMania 22, because rumour innuendo was that they wanted Bret to be part of the Vince and Shawn match that year, possibly as a special guest referee, but possibly just doing a run-in or something. But I definitely think the guest referee thing was there. I think he was at least asked to be in that match, but he turned it down. And that's just a shame, but it was awesome to see him back. Awesome to see him give his induction speech and all that. So, but all in all, a great Hall of Fame class. Coming at number 2, the WWE Hall of Fame class of 2014. This was an awesome class, to be honest. I mean, this was definitely one of the best classes that WWE ever put out. I mean, obviously this tied into WrestleMania 30, so that was a big deal. This is a big class of a couple of really, really big names and a couple of guys you're just so glad got in the WWE Hall of Fame before it was too late, which I'll explain in a sec. So, get out the way. Obviously, Carlos Colon, he was inducted. I don't really know much about Carlos Colon, to be honest with you, although except that he was a big star in Puerto Rico for many years in the 70s, 80s. The only direct appearance, of course, was Royal Rumble 1993, where Gorilla Monsoon referred to Carlos Colon as a fiery youngster. But despite the fact Carlos Colon was about 45 years old at the time. But yeah, I mean, obviously Carlos Colon, he was the owner, I think it was a WWC, World Wrestling Council, I believe that was the name of the company. I mean, he had many matches with a lot of NWA champions of that era, notably Ric Flair, Harley Race, those guys. And of course, he was the father of Carlito and Primo, and I think the uncle of Epico. So there was that. So that was fine. I mean, you get those type of inductions every year. I mean, maybe not every year, but quite a few years. So sometimes you got people like Antonio Inoki, Tatsu Fujinami, people like that. So it was cool. And then I think for the women, Lita got in that year, which, yeah, if you're going to induct women at the Hall of Fame, Lita's got to be one of your go-tos, hasn't she? And then obviously, big star in the Attitude Era, teaming with the Hardy Boys, and obviously great run of Trish Stratus over the years. I mean, obviously, if you weren't watching wrestling at the time, Lita was a big star. I think she was really popular with the tomboy type girls, because obviously at the time, most WWF divas were blonde, big faked hits, eyelashes and all that. WWE divas, so Sunny Sable, Trish Stratus, Terry Runnels, etc. But Lita kind of had that, this is a cool chick you want to hang around with. So obviously she had that punk rock factor to her, the tattoos, obviously, and she was one of the most fit. She was one of the ones that were willing to get into the ring and do some good stuff. Obviously, then it went into the 2000s as well. Then she was a multiple-time women's champion. Obviously, the whole controversial situation with Edge, but led to an awesome on-screen partnership. I mean, you can't take that away from obviously the whole situation with Edge, Matt Hardy, and Lita was a completely shitty situation. However, look at it as from a business perspective, Edge and Lita were absolutely magical together as a couple in the WWE. It was just great on-screen chemistry there. And of course, she's come back periodically over the years, but it was just so good that she got inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. Then you got manager Paul Bearer. Of course, Paul Bearer passed away the year before. That's kind of a shame Paul Bearer didn't get in when he was alive, because I get the impression they were probably going to save Paul Bearer for whenever The Undertaker went in. Obviously when Paul Bearer was alive, so I don't know if they were going to have a dual induction or they both just going to get inducted at the same ceremony. Well, that's my impression anyway, that they were waiting for The Undertaker to retire. But of course, Paul Bearer passed away in 2013. Obviously, infamously, Paul Bearer's death was due to the Undertaker CM Punk storyline of going to WrestleMania 29. But he got his induction. You got to say, I'll probably say Paul Bearer, one of the absolute greatest managers of all time. I mean, obviously that he's going in based on being Paul Bearer, but before Paul Bearer, he was a manager called Percy Pringle in most of the territories back in the day. I mean, notably stuff like Florida, World Class Championship Wrestling, etc. I mean, I think he's Mid-South. I think he's pretty much well known for managing Rick Rude back in Rick Rude before Rick Rude went to WWF. But of course, going to WWF in 1991, the manager of the for me maybe the most underrated manager of all time, because I just feel like he was so vital to the Undertaker's success. I mean, would the Undertaker have been successful if someone like his brother Love had stayed his manager? Yeah, because I think the gimmick was strong, but I think Paul Bearer added so much to that. I mean, he was really a vital part of the package. I mean, Paul Bearer did most of the talking, Undertaker did the ass kicking. I think, and the characters just complemented each other so well. I mean, for me anyway, I think a lot of people would say Paul Heyman and Brock Lesnar. But for me, I would say Undertaker and Paul Bearer, for me, my favourite manager-client combo of all time. I mean, it was just an amazing package, and then how he reinvented himself when he turned heel, teamed up with Mankind, and then of course, particularly his part in the whole Undertaker Kane saga. I mean, I remember back in the Attitude Era, Paul Bearer was a despicable piece of shit. So 97, 98, I mean, what a horrible piece of shit this character was. There was nothing to like about this character at all. I mean, he was an obnoxious dick. And if you were a fan, you wanted to say The Undertaker just kicked the shit out of this guy. Then, of course, much like it was for The Undertaker, he was a vital part of Kane's success in the company. I mean, like I said, I don't think the introduction of Kane and all that and the build-up to WrestleMania 14 would have been half as good if it wasn't for Paul Bearer. I mean, he was such a vital part of that story. And then, of course, after that, it was kind of I mean, when he was managing The Undertaker in 1999 as part of the Ministry, it was alright, I suppose. Definitely, the magic that they had in the early 90s definitely wasn't there, though. But it was still kind of cool. And then he very briefly managed Kane again in the year 2000, then kind of disappeared after that. But I think he definitely worked behind the scenes for WWE for quite a while. Then, of course, came back for WrestleMania 20 with The Undertaker, which initially was a cool moment, but it kind of fizzled out. And Paul Bearer was infamously buried in concrete at the Great American Bash 2004. Then he was gone for several years, came back in 2010 to be part of the Undertaker Kane feud there. And he did a decent job there, but then of course, and after that, he would show up every now and then for Kane feuds. I remember when Edge, oh my god, when Edge trapped him in the freezer in 2010 and kidnapped him. Oh god, that was just bad. And I think he was using the Randy Orton Kane feud in 2012 as well. Oh god. But for his bodywork, Paul Bearer absolutely gets into the Hall of Fame for me. Then the celebrity one, Mr. T. I mean, you can only take the Celebrity Hall of Fame wing seriously, but if they're going to induct celebrities in the Hall of Fame, the one they should have inducted before anyone else was Mr. T. I mean, you think the celebrities in the WWE, you've got to think of Mr. T. I'll say the main two for me are Mr. T and Mike Tyson, but because Mr. T came first, he should have got the nod before Tyson, but he finally got it. I mean, he should have got in years ago before he did. I mean, obviously they did the whole Pete Rose thing, but that was mainly as a joke. So I would say if they had him in 2005 and they inducted the likes of Hogan and Piper, that would have been great. But we had to wait till 2014 for him to go in. I don't know why. Maybe Mr. T had turned down the pass. I don't know. Or maybe WWE just decided they wanted Mr. T in because of tying into WrestleMania 30. I don't know. But he got in. I mean, without Mr. T, WrestleMania 1's not a pure success. It's really not. I mean, obviously at the time, Mr. T was one of the biggest stars on television with the A-Team, and previously had a massive role in Rocky 3. I think one of the biggest reasons WrestleMania 1 was so successful because the appeal of Mr. T wrestling. I mean, Mr. T being the main event led to a lot of people that weren't wrestling fans watching the show, and of course the rest is history. The WWF boomed after that. I know we don't want to talk about the speeches too much, but this is probably the funniest Hall of Fame speech of all time. I don't know if you remember, because Mr. T wanted to thank his mother, and he went, oh god, it must have been a 10-15 minute rant just rambling about his mother, how his mother did this, his mother did that, he loved his mother, to the point where, and this is harsh as fuck, but it had to be done. So the next inductee was Paul Bearer, but Mr. T was just on the stage rambling on and on and on. So they played Kane's music. So Kane's music had to interrupt Mr. T. Mr. T was like, oh, guess what time's cut then? Goodbye, people. So they had to the point where they had to get Kane to interrupt Mr. T to very politely tell him to get off the stage so they could move on with this damn thing. But yeah, and then obviously 2 big inductions for me. These are 2 I'm just so glad I happened before it was too late. And that was first Razor Ramon, aka Scott Hall. But he was going in under the Razor Ramon name, and I guess the reason he did that is so later on they can induct the NWO as a group. But yeah, because obviously Scott Hall, Razor Ramon's history is well known. You don't really need me to repeat it. I mean, we had a lot of drug and alcohol issues over the years. I mean, pretty much, I mean, by all accounts, it's still a battle for him. He still struggles to stay sober. But over the last 5 years, he's done very, very well. I mean, obviously it wasn't until DDP intervened. And obviously this ties into the next inductee, which I'll talk about in a sec. Had Scott out of his house and just really got him on DDP yoga and got him on a program, kept him sober. I mean, obviously I think like this is obviously the main reason it took Scott Hall so long to get to WWE Hall of Fame. You'd think if Scott Hall had his shit together, he probably would have stayed in the company longer in 2002. Say a healthy sober Scott Hall came back in 2002. I think he was still in his early 40s by that point. You think he could still be wrestling until about 2007-ish maybe? And obviously if he had his shit together, he could have definitely been working backstage in WWE and all that. So you're thinking he probably could have got the WWE Hall of Fame 2008-ish time, something like that. But of course, Scott Hall's personal struggles were so well known and so public. I mean, it's well known that WWE tried so many times to get Scott Hall to rehab and help him out, and it never really clicked until DDP was the one who finally got him sober and all that. I think that was the fear. They didn't want Scott Hall. I think the fear was Scott Hall would turn up the Hall of Fame drunk, so that's why they didn't induct him. So the story goes, obviously this ties into the next guy as well, because DDP was talking to Triple H about inducting these guys. I mean, I guess this was like 2013, maybe 2012. So Triple H said, I'll tell you what, we'll dangle this carrot. If he can stay sober and have no issues for a year, we'll induct him in 2014. And it happened. It was just great because obviously for me, a lot of my childhood years with the New Generation era, Razor Ramon, one of the biggest stars of that era, probably one of my favourite characters of that era, of course. I mean, obviously Scott Hall, the NWO, that was classic as well. Then obviously after that, Jake the Snake Roberts, that was like, finally that happened to me. Much like Scott Hall, would have happened years earlier, but of course, Jake's issues were well known. And for these 2 guys, I'm just so glad they got in, because obviously, statistically speaking, all the stuff they did, they could have been one of those guys that died in hotel rooms like so many others had in the past. I mean, I know that's more to say, but it's the truth. I mean, but thank God that they're both here. And obviously, Jake the Snake, I mean, obviously his issues, well documented stuff like Beyond the Mat, obviously the Heroes of Wrestling debacle in 1999, and all that. And much like Scott Hall, struggled for years and years and years to get off the drink and drugs. And it was Diamond Dallas Page that intervened. And this was probably about 2012, 2013. And got Jake the Snake healthy, doing yoga, staying sober. It was just so great that he finally got into the Hall of Fame. You could see how much that meant to him. And I think he did. Jake's speech was absolutely phenomenal as well. But obviously for his body of work, Jake the Snake Roberts, massive star for many years. Obviously in the territory days, he was a big star pretty much anywhere he went, whether that was Mid-South, World Class, Georgia Championship Wrestling, etc. Then of course came to the WWF in 1986 as Jake the Snake Roberts, one of the biggest stars of the 1980s for sure. I mean, obviously just absolutely legendary feuds with the likes of Ravishing Rick Rude, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, Andre the Giant. Obviously he was an early victim of the Undertaker streak, and you think his career peaked far too early, because obviously 1992 was probably pretty much the end of Jake's big time run. I mean, if Jake the Snake was sober, he could have been a star for a lot longer than that. And obviously the WCW run's best forgotten, then he came back to WF, briefly in 1986 to do the religious man Jake Roberts gimmick, which, despite its flaws, was the catalyst for Austin 316, which was kind of a big deal. But yeah, and obviously then after that, Jake pretty much didn't do anything in the business. Small independents, the best. But it's so good he finally got in the Hall of Fame. And then obviously the star inductee that year, the Ultimate Warrior. I mean, that's a crazy story. So for 18 years, Warrior didn't do a referee at odds. I mean, Warrior and Vince didn't speak, and then Warrior comes back to the WWE, does the Hall of Fame, shows up at WrestleMania, cuts a promo on Raw, and then dies the next day. I mean, it's so weird looking back now. So obviously the Warrior, say what you will about the Ultimate Warrior, and I'm sure a lot of people have their opinions on the Ultimate Warrior, but in his prime, and from say like 88 or about 91, absolute megastar. I mean, you can say whatever you want. Maybe, he can't wrestle. He can only do clotheslines and shoulder blocks and press slams. He can't do any flips or kicks. So say whatever you want about his wrestling ability. That's not why the Ultimate Warrior was a star. Oh, he undeniably had charisma. He had a great gimmick. He just had that it factor, something about him. And then obviously with the WWF machine behind him, was able to become a mega star. I mean, he was right up there with Hulk Hogan in terms of popularity. Of course, got the mega push. Great in the Continental Champion. I think he was awesome in the Continental Champion, looking back, to be fair. I mean, obviously he wasn't the technical workhorse in the Continental Champion that someone like Randy Savage was, or Ricky Steamboat was, or people like Mr. Perfect, Bret Hart, and Shawn Michaels would become. But he did it. He was one of those, using the Continental Champion as a stepping stone. I mean, he got that belt, got really over, and then because of that, was able to go on to become the World Wrestling Federation champion. So obviously 89, epic feud of Rousey and Rick Rude, which you talked about earlier in the video. Then of course obviously his crowning moment, WrestleMania 6, the Ultimate Challenge, beating Hulk Hogan to become the World Wrestling Federation champion. Now his title run wasn't a massive success or anything. Then obviously WrestleMania 7 had the best match of his career against Randy Savage. Then of course after 1991 his success was moderate. I mean, his 1992 comeback was what it was. I mean, obviously you had that really good match with Savage at SummerSlam, but then this is all probably best remembered for the batshit insane feud of Papa Shango, if you remember that one. Then obviously he came back in 1996, which that's left best unsaid. Let's just forget about that. That Warrior 1996 return. Then obviously after that he fell out with the company spectacularly. And obviously he had his run of WCW in 1998, that infamously awful match of Hulk Hogan at Halloween Havoc 1998, which again, we don't need to get into that one too much. But then of course after that was pretty much it for the Warrior in Main Street Wrestling. He was done. He had one match in 2008 in Barcelona against Orlando Jordan. I mean, for a 50-year-old man that hadn't wrestled in 10 years, it wasn't absolutely terrible. But he pretty much did that match so his daughters could see him wrestle live for the first time. Because obviously he had his kids after his career ended. So, and obviously there was all the bad blood of him in WWE. And obviously the self-destruction of the Ultimate Warrior DVD that came out in 2005, that was just nasty and spiteful. I'm sorry, but you can't really defend that. I mean, granted, some of it was true, what they were saying, but it just seemed like they were doing it just to be arseholes and just to be spiteful and just to try and shit on his legacy and shit on his fans, because despite that, Ultimate Warrior had a lot of fans and still has a lot of fans to this day. I believe he was, then obviously WWE later on when they needed more star inductee, I believe he tried to induct him in 2010 in Phoenix, but the Warrior was still pissed off and said no. And then the Warrior 2013, the Ultimate Warrior, started working for WWE 2K14 games, so he was a downloadable star in that. And I think that got Warrior and WWE talking, and then eventually the Warrior decided yes, he was going to bury the hatchet, go into WWE Hall of Fame. And who knows what Warrior was thinking? Was he thinking, did Warrior know he had a heart condition, and Warrior knew he pretty much wasn't going to be around much longer, with hoping if he got back into bed with WWE, that would secure the future for his family. You've got to think that must have been what he was thinking, because obviously the promo he cut on Raw was really eerie. Obviously he was talking about death and all that, and then he dies the next day, which is just crazy. So you've got to think that's probably what was on Warrior's mind. He must have knew he had a heart condition, And he must, because I think his father died around the same age that he did, so he must have been thinking he mustn't have long left, and obviously getting the WWE contract and all that probably secures the financial future of his family. So you got to think that that was a deal. But it was great to see him finally getting the WWE Hall of Fame, because say what you want, Ultimate Warrior was definitely a Hall of Fame worthy person, and this was a great class. Coming at number one, for me, there's no choice here. I mean, this is the gold standard of Hall of Fame classes. And of course, I'm talking about the last time WrestleMania was in New York, New Jersey, and that is 2013. And this one, of course, took place in Madison Square Garden. I mean, this one, yeah, for me, this is the best Hall of Fame class of WWE's ever put together. I mean, from top to bottom, everyone was a major star in some way, shape, or form, and they were all Hall of Fame worthy candidates. So, and obviously, this for me was, I think this, I'll talk about it later, about this Hall of Fame helped legitimise the WWE Hall of Fame as a whole. So, because they got the Kubakus this year, which we'll talk about in a minute. Now, let's get this out of the way. Some fella. What's that guy's name? Some fella named Trump got on the Hall of Fame. Oh, Donald Trump, that's right. The current United States President got in the WWE Hall of Fame as a celebrity inductee that year. I mean, say what you will about Donald Trump, and don't worry, a lot of people have strong opinions about Donald Trump. I mean, for me, I live in England, so I'm going to have to deal with this shit as the President of the United States. I mean, we have our own political bullshit to deal with, so I don't have to deal with Donald Trump's bullshit and all that. Sure, he's a horrible president, all that. But did Donald Trump at the time deserve to go in the WWE Hall of Fame based on his work? Yeah, I would say absolutely yes. I mean, for what he was in there for, I mean, obviously, Trump Plaza hosted WrestleMania 4 and 5, but this is mainly down to WrestleMania 23, the Battle of the Billionaires, which Vince and Donald Trump. I mean, undeniably, you got to Trump haters, and I'm sure there's a lot of you out there, have got to give the devil his due. I mean, due to a large part of him participating in this, WrestleMania 23 at that time drew the biggest buy rate of all time, and still only second to WrestleMania 28. So that Battle of Billionaires thing was a huge success, and you've got to really give a lot of credit to that to Donald Trump. So based on that, he's definitely got to be in the WWE Hall of Fame. I mean, when you look at some of the other celebrity inductees that went in, like Pete Rose, Drew Carey, people like that, Kid Rock and people like that. I mean, Donald Trump's a way more worthy inductee than them. So obviously, yeah, Donald Trump's a piece of shit and all that. Yeah, that's fine, I get that. But he's definitely a WWE Hall of Fame worthy person. Then the woman this year, Trish Stratus, I mean, that was great. So right off the bat, you've got an absolute big star in the women's division in there. I mean, I think over the last couple of years, there's been let's induct a woman every year, leading to some induction. I mean, to me, Jacqueline Ivory, they're really Hall of Fame worthy candidates. I mean, yeah, they were sort of decent sized stars, the Attitude Era, but WWE Hall of Famers, because obviously you went from a 3 in a row, so you went from Trish later to Alundra Blaze, awesome. Then you went to Jacqueline, which is Then I guess 2000 Beth Phoenix, and you got Ivory last year, and Tori Wilson this year, but they knocked it out the park this year with Trish Stratus. I mean, yeah, she was, for me, still my favourite women's wrestler of all time. I mean, yeah, obviously I know the women's division's advanced so much in the last few years, but just imagine Trish Stratus in a prime in this current women's division. I still think Trish Stratus would be in the top. I think Trish Stratus would still be the top woman in the business right now. I mean, obviously she had an awesome look. I mean, let's face it, a lot of guys watch wrestling to see attractive women. I mean, it's just true, isn't it? And Trish Stratus, super hot, awesome character, great, pretty damn good on the microphone. I mean, she did it in a time where the women's division wasn't respected. But then you think, before like this whole women's revolution of the last few years, up until then, pretty much the best women's matches in WWE history, Trish Stratus had most of them. So most notably the Victoria Street Fight, the Survivor Series 02, the Triple Threat Women's Title match at WrestleMania 19. Some of the matches of Lita, including the main event of Raw in 2004, and Trish's last full-time match at Unforgiven 2006. Then you think Mickie James at WrestleMania 22. So Trish Stratus paved the way in a lot of ways. I mean, obviously that was in a more competitive environment as well, when you had guys like Triple H and The Rock and all that still around. So but so for Trish and Lita, the main event, that Raw was really a big deal at the time. And of course, obviously, you're looking back though, the run was actually really brief as well, because she retired from full-time competition in 2006. She's wrestled a handful of times since then, but just imagine Trish Stratus now against the likes of Charlotte, Becky Lynch, Ronda Rousey, Sasha Banks, Bayley, etc. I mean, she'd be right up there with them, I think. Definitely great Hall of Fame induction. Then you got Booker T. That's another one. To say Booker T was probably the fourth guy down of Hall of Famers shows how awesome this Hall of Fame class really was. I think for most years, Booker T would probably be a core headliner. I mean, probably the second off last guy to go in, but this year he was pretty much on the list of fourth most high profile guy. I mean, that just shows how stacked this Hall of Fame card really was. So Booker T, of course. And of course, Booker T's going in again this year, with him and Stevie Ray going in as Harlem Heat, which is, I guess, fine, whatever. But for me, I don't think that's really necessary, because I think Booker T got to go in by himself, and he was real star Harlem Heat. So obviously, big star WCW. Again, probably want to people talk about homegrown WCW stars and saying how there was hardly any of them. But Booker T's definitely one of those guys. I mean, he was from WCW from 1993 all the way at the end, and pretty much rose all the way, climbed through the ranks. I mean, started off as a tag team, Harlem Heat, for quite a few years, a really successful tag team, multiple time WCW tag team champions, and then you had a singles run started in 1998, and for me, Booker T, probably one of the best WCW television champions of all time. I mean, that television title run was one of the things that really elevated it. I think it really elevated the television title belt as well. I mean, he had really good matches like the Perry Saturn, a really underrated rival, Rick Martel in 1998, and of course, most famously, the legendary Best of 7 series with Chris Benoit in 1998. I mean, those matches were absolutely outstanding, definitely hold up with this day. And then obviously, feuding with people like Scott Stein in 1999, moved up to the US title level, runs as US champion. Then 2000, obviously when WCW was in the shitter, one of the guys that really got the opportunity was Booker T in the last July 2000 Bash at the Beach. Booker T becomes the WCW World Heavyweight Champion, and that was great. That was a guy who would work his arse off for so many years and fucking deserved it. And obviously WCW died in 2001. And Booker T ended WCW as the United States and the World Heavyweight Champion simultaneously. And of course, Booker T, along with Diamond Dallas Page, was one of the only two real WCW stars to go to the WWF for an invasion. And despite some hiccups, I mean, at times he was made to look bad in feud with The Rock and that. But you look at it, he main event at SummerSlam 2001, The Rock, in a huge match. And then really got himself, I think as time went on, he got himself over as a WWE superstar. I mean, 2002, his babyface turn. Team Goldust was just, no pun intended, was absolute gold. I mean, it was just really classic stuff. I mean, it was tremendous. Loved that feud. Then of course, we don't need to talk about WrestleMania 19 and Triple H, and of course, but after that he had a moderately successful run. I mean, he was always around the Intercontinental title level. I mean, he was a US champion on SmackDown a number of times. Big feud with John Cena in 2004. Resurrected his rival with Chris Benoit in 2005. Actually redid the Best of 7 series, but in the WWE. Then of course, he's probably his most famous character is King Booker in 2006. Won the 2006 King of the Ring. He was able to take that King gimmick and make it really work, and finally have that world title run in the WWE that eluded him. I mean, he should have got the title back in 2003, but he had to wait till 2006 to get his title run. And really underrated reign, I would say. I mean, he had a good title run. I personally like King Booker. a lot more than most people. A lot of people didn't like King Booker, but I thought it was great. I thought it was some of his best stuff he ever did in the WWE. And of course, he left the WWE in 2007, had a run in TNA, came back in 2011 to do the commentary thing, which, and he still works with the WWE in some capacity now. I mean, most notably, he does the kickoff panels for the pay-per-views on the network and stuff like that. So yeah, it was just great to see him get recognised and go to WWE Hall of Fame. And then these three guys, I mean, each one of these guys realistically could have been a headline attraction, but only one was in this night. First, Mick Foley. I mean, that was an induction I was waiting for a long time. Massive Mick Foley fan back in the day. One of the biggest superstars of the 1990s, especially that Attitude Era boom. You look at The Rock, you look at Austin, you look at The Undertaker. Mankind was right up there with those guys. I mean, he really was. He was in the mix the whole time. Obviously, Mick Foley, a guy who never should have made it in the wrestling business. I mean, look at him. Average athlete, not really an athletic background at all. Not very naturally gifted, didn't look like a superstar, but he had heart, he had passion, he had a style that he believed in. That he finally got himself over. I mean, obviously, long career as Cactus Jack for many years. Mainly in WCW, was probably most remembered for great feud with the likes of Sting. Obviously, legendary feud with Big Van Vader. I mean, really, really awesome stuff. Then, of course, his ECW run was just amazing. Obviously, the anti-hardcore thing with Tommy Dreamer into 1995 was just classic stuff. Some of his best work. Then, obviously, he's working death matches in Japan, working with Terry Funk and all the crazy stuff done there. Finally made it to the WWF in 1996, changing, I mean, going against everything that he did before. I mean, it would have been easy for him to come in as Cactus Jack, but Vince didn't want Cactus Jack. He created Mankind, came in, got immediate over. I mean, for me at the time, had the Undertaker's best ever feud at the time. I mean, the Undertaker Mankind feud in 1996 was classic, and of course, had that epic match at Mind Games against Shawn Michaels in 1996. Obviously, the whole interview with Jim Ross in 1997, and then at one point at the same time being Mankind, Cactus Jack and Dude Love in 1997. 1998, the Dude Love Austin feud was a big feud for the company, of course. Famous Hell in a Cell in 1998. We've done it again with that one. I mean, that one's being taught to death, but of course, that was a match that immortalised him forever. And then getting over as a comedy character in late 1998, and then which led to him becoming the World Wrestling Federation champion on January 4th, 1989. I mean, that was just so awesome. Mick Foley was never supposed to be the world champion, but he was, and obviously he famously had the legendary feud with The Rock, and of course the Rock and Sock connection. That's just classic TV. I mean, some of the best comedy stuff the WWE's ever done. Then of course ended his full-time career in 2000 as Cactus Jack, that legendary feud with Triple H, which included the awesome Royal Rumble street fight, retiring at No Way Out 2000, until he came back for WrestleMania 2000, the main event, but that's another issue. Then, of course, the Commissioner Foley run, for me, awesome stuff. For me, my favourite GM, Commissioner, President, Director of Authority, whatever the fuck you want to call it in wrestling history. Of course, after that, came back to the ring in 2004 for that legendary feud of Randy Orton, including the classic match of Backlash 2004. Then after that, he would come back for little stints here and there. I think he had a pretty decent run in 2006, to be fair. First, stealing the short WrestleMania 22 with Edge, and then having that heel turn and doing the stuff at ECW One Night Stand, doing the Ric Flair feud, and again have surprisingly stealing the short SummerSlam 2006. And then pretty much after that, he pretty much faded out. He had like one match in 2007, a couple of matches in 2008, including the 2008 Royal Rumble. Then he had a brief run on commentary on SmackDown in 2008, left for TNA for a while, came back, had his last official WWE match at Royal Rumble 2012. Then after that, had to retire for good this time. I mean, Mick Foley's probably never going to wrestle again. I mean, you never say never in this business, but you think now with his age and his injury history and all that, probably not going to happen. But of course, because it was just so great. He went in Madison Square Garden as well, where he famously hitchhiked in 1983 when he was 18 years old to watch Jimmy Snooker and Don Morocco's famous cage match where Snooker died under Morocco. So yeah, awesome that Mick Foley got on there, and then Bob Backlund finally gets in WWE Hall of Fame. I mean, Bob Backlund, former World Wrestling Federation champion. I mean, from 1978 to 1983, Bob Backlund was a champion, and yes, there were no interruptions in that time, kids. Bob Backlund was genuinely the World Wrestling Federation champion for nearly 6 years. I mean, in this era, it's really crazy to think about. I mean, we've had a few the last couple of years. I mean, CM Punk, of course, a year and 2 months. AJ Styles, just shy of 1 year as WWE champion. But to be the world champion for 5 straight years is just unheard of nowadays. And to be fair, with weekly television, 12 pay-per-views a year, it couldn't work in this era. That's the thing. So back when Bruno and Backlund did it, you would go to Madison Square Garden once a month. Television was squash matches. House show was all about your business. So there wasn't 3 hours of WWF on television every Monday, 2 hours on every Tuesday, then a 4-hour pay-per-view every month. Just wasn't so I think you could move along a bit slowly back then. I think a lot of people have a lot of opinions on Bob Backlund. I mean, granted, promo-wise, not great personality, but as far as technical wrestling, probably one of the best of all time. I mean, I think a lot of people say Backlund wasn't over, but I've watched quite a few matches of Backlund back when he was a champion, and to me, I could be wrong because I wasn't there at the time, obviously because I wasn't alive, but it seems to me like Bob Backlund was really, really over with the fans. I mean, I don't remember seeing a Bob Backlund title defence from those days where the fans weren't into it. I mean, the fans always cheered Bob Backlund's comebacks, and I think a lot of people try to say Backlund didn't draw, but again, I've watched a few of those big matches, and every time I watch it, the arena looks full. So, and you think realistically, if Bob Backlund wasn't drawn, he wouldn't be the champion for that long, surely. I mean, surely if Bob Backlund wasn't drawn, he would have took the title off him, right? I mean, I know the stubbornness is a McMahon trait, and McMahon really wants something to work, he'll be stubborn about it, but you're thinking Vince Seeley wouldn't be so stubborn to keep a title on him for 5 years just to try and prove a point, right? I mean, so obviously Backlund, and of course Backlund drops out of sight after he dropped the title, the Iron Sheik in 83. I believe he was around for a little bit in 84, but they asked Backlund to turn heel and feud with Hulk Hogan, but at the time Bob Backlund didn't want to do that and then left the company, and then comes back in 1992. I've always been fascinated by Backlund's comeback in the 1990s, because I've been watching, because obviously the WWF Superstars on the network recently came on, so I've been going back and reliving all these shows, reliving my childhood. And you look at the Bob Backlund vignettes, and he just looks ridiculously out of place in this era. I mean, this is a time where you have Repo Men repossessing stuff, Papa Shango putting curses on people, Vikings like the Berserker trying to maim the Undertaker to death, ex-cons coming in and attacking prison guards, and here's Bob Backlund looking like exactly like he did in 1978 with their pale ginger hair. The pale skin, ginger hair, the old school boots and tights, being an all-American boy and an old school wrestler, it just looked so weird. But then Backlund had probably an awesome performance in 1993 Royal Rumble, where he lasted 61 minutes, but then didn't really get capitalised on. But he was around for 93, 1994, but he wasn't really doing anything significant. I mean, it's weird, because obviously you watch early Raws as well, he's on quite a few of them. Bob Backlund wrestling people like Papa Shango just looks so weird. Then of course he morphed it with Mr. Backlund in 1994, which for me that was probably one of the most underrated heel turns of all time, in my opinion. I mean, this is the stuff I grew up watching with Bob Backlund and Bret Hart, where Backlund started going batshit crazy, snapping and attacking people. And really Bob Backlund was essentially a bad guy by being a good guy, if that makes sense. So in Bob Backlund's mind, he wasn't being a bad guy. I mean, he did everything right. He looked after himself. He looked after his kids. He did all that stuff. But obviously this new generation, goddamn kids, didn't appreciate what Bob Backlund was doing. So Bob Backlund's mind, Bob Backlund hadn't changed. The world had changed. So yeah, obviously look at some of those Bob Backlund promos from 1994. I think Daniel Bryan's definitely borrowed a little bit off Bob Backlund, because Daniel Bryan, similar situation for me. Daniel Bryan thinks he's right and he's just being extreme about it. And obviously Backlund infamously beat Bret Hart for the title at Survivor Series 1994, but then lost the belt to Diesel 4 days later in Madison Square Garden, and then pretty much fizzled out in 1995, and then 1996 he was pretty much gone. Briefly came back to manage the Sultan, and then disappeared from WWE altogether. Back very briefly in 2000 to be aligned with Kurt Angle. Made an appearance at 2000 Royal Rumble. There's another one, I'm not sure why it took Backlund so long to go in the Hall of Fame, but so glad he got in. I mean, obviously Madison Square Garden as well, which was a big thing from at the time. Now, this Hall of Fame would not be complete without the one, the only, Bruno Sammartino. For me, this was a coup of coups. This was probably, I don't know, maybe the most important induction of all time. I mean, it was one of those things, because for a long time we had this WWE Hall of Fame, but then everyone was like, how would you have a Hall of Fame without Bruno Sammartino in it? So for years and years and years, Bruno and WWE were at odds. I mean, Bruno fell out of the company in the late 80s, didn't like the way wrestling had gone and all that, didn't like Vince McMahon personally, and for a long time was a massive critic of WWF, and he was pretty much the old man yelling at the cloud, because wrestling was not the same as it was in his day, damn it, and he didn't like it type thing. It was for, Vince and Bruno are never going to get back there. Now I'm pretty sure there was at least a couple of attempts to get Bruno at the Hall of Fame in the mid-2000s, but Bruno turned it down. I mean, he just didn't want to do it. He wasn't interested. So it looked like Bruno's never ever going to get in the Hall of Fame, and as a result, the WWE Hall of Fame is always going to have this big asterisk next to it. Now, I'll give WWE the benefit of the doubt here, because I believe it was them trying to get Bruno to go in the Hall of Fame a number of times, and he turned it down. But obviously, you got the WWE Hall of Fame, you've got a guy that was your world champion for 8 years, and he wasn't going to get it. I mean, because obviously Bruno, for me, obviously one of the biggest icons in WWF history. I mean, obviously, for me, getting Bruno back in was massive, because that was pretty much WWF history for its first 20 years. From 1963 to 1983, it was Bruno Sammartino, Bob Backlund, and then obviously Superstar Billy Graham had a good run as champion. Pedro Morales had a decent run as champion. But for me, obviously the two definitive champions before like the Hogan era were definitely Bruno and Backlund. Obviously Bruno carried the company in those early years. I mean, you got to think though, Vince Jr. took it to a whole nother level. But if you didn't have a good New Year territory to buy from his dad, would you have been as successful? I don't know. But you think Bruno, of course, from 1963 and 1971 was the WWF champion. That's just crazy to think about. He was champion for 8 years. Just think about that. 8 years as champion. That's just mental to think about now. I mean, like I was talking about when I was talking about Backlund, that would just never ever happen nowadays. I mean, I just think it'd be impossible for that to work now. I really do. Because obviously, like I say, I was talking about the Punk title reign, the AJ title reign, and how many people were sick of AJ's title reign by the end. I mean, I know a lot of people might deny it, but I was on the IWC, I was seeing a lot of the comments, I was seeing a lot of people saying that AJ needs to lose the title. But then obviously you had probably the most recent example, it was Okada having a 2-year IWGP title reign, and that was seen as monumental. But if you think about this, Bruno's title reign was 4 times as long as that. Just crazy to think about, like how different wrestling used to be and all that. I mean, that would never ever ever work now. But then of course he was title champion again from 1974 to 1977. So a combined 11 years as a WWF champion. I mean, of course. So obviously I'm not going to do a career retrospective of Bruno. That would take forever. But needless to say, Bruno, massive star, did everything. Obviously retired from the ring, and well, I think it was like 1987 he retired for good, and then was gone. No, he was never any of the DVD documentaries or anything like that. Never did guest appearances on Raw. Nothing, which was sad really, because Bruno meant so much to the organisation that it was just sad that Bruno and the WWE weren't working together. And then it was Triple H. I think Triple H made a comment to Vince, what if we get Bruno for the Hall of Fame this year? Because it was Madison Square Garden, and Vince was like, yeah, good luck with that, pal. So then Triple H decided it was going to be his mission. He was going to try, he was going to get Bruno Sammartino. He was going to be the one to mediate it. So Vince and Bruno got back together. So period of months where Bruno and Triple H were talking. I mean, Triple H tried to tell Bruno that the WWE is all family friendly now and all that, and largely the drug abuse of the past is gone. Got Bruno watching WWE again, and Bruno saw that this was now the PG era. Things were a bit different now. So slowly but surely, Triple H and Bruno built up a relationship together, and then to the point where it finally happened. Triple H finally got Bruno to agree to go into the WWE Hall of Fame, and how fitting it was Madison Square Garden as well, where he had so many sellouts over the years. I mean, Madison Square Garden and Bruno Sammartino are synonymous with each other, and at the age of, I think it was late 70s at the time, about 78, something like that, for him to have that one last sellout. And I think it's equally important now because we lost Bruno Sammartino last year, and it just would have been tragic if it never happened and Bruno never got into the WWE Hall of Fame alive. So it was awesome that he was alive and got into the Hall of Fame that year. But yeah, so for me, that is the absolute gold standard of Hall of Fame classes. So that's a wrap, guys. This is a long video. We're going well over an hour with this one. So thanks for watching. And like I say, 2 more Fave Fives to go before WrestleMania. We're going to do next week Fave 5 WrestleMania matches. The following week, Fave 5 WrestleMania shows. So thanks for the support, guys. And until next time, peace.